some people may not be willing to have this conversation. Some people may not be willing to sit in front of this camera with you because of their fear of reprisal or what could occur to them just for even having the conversation, the fear of saying the wrong thing.
I talk about it all the time with people with people who want to possibly come on the show or who are fearful about coming on, fearful about their views. I was literally talking about someone 15 minutes before we aired about this exact issue. So I'm well familiar with the fear that you're describing. I think that's an irrational fear. I think it's much more irrational than the fear that you may encounter danger because of the existence of racism. So that is my perspective on that. That's based on the research and investigation I've done into this issue, and my investigation into those people's fears and the nature of their fears. So
but that's subjective, though. You got to conclude, though, Will, that that's subjective to suggest that someone's fear is irrational, because to determine what's a rational fear has to speak to that person's uniqueness. So if I'm afraid of snakes, even if there are no snakes within 100 yards, and you tell me that my fear of those snakes are irrational.
No, well, because snakes exist. So when I say irrational, I mean it's not connected to reality as strongly as they actually think it is.
As strongly. That's the key part. Right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a thing. So, like I said, it's a thing that's always existed. I'm not going to pretend like it doesn't exist. Yeah. So, I'm not going to pretend like it's not a part of reality. However, the connection that they've made to it is irrational, and so that is my experience in having that dialogue. I will say that, there are. People have a heightened level of sensitivity these days, for sure. I think that's exhibited in many ways, like the Whoopi Goldberg situation that you described, and many other situations, right? Like there's countless examples, but that's because
Dave Chappelle comes to mind. He's one of my favorite comics.
Yeah, there's tons of people, but ultimately, first of all, I would say the consequences of what happens with these people is almost never. It's very few people who have actually lost their employment. Of all of these stories that come out, very few people who have lost their employment because of these incidents. That's the first thing that I found in my research. And the second thing is that I think that the people who are making the decision for whether to terminate someone or what disciplinary action to take or what next steps to take, I think a lot of these people are a little bit ignorant themselves sometimes of the issues of race, as we've been talking about them today. And so when some kind of racial issue happens, there's a fear that they have, the decision makers, of what will happen if we don't take action, or what will we be seen as promoting racism, or will we be seen as not protecting our student body of racialized Black people, or whatever the case may be. And it's that thought process, like you were talking about earlier, that I think we need to unravel. They should be thinking about that. What they should be doing is, evaluating the situation just like any other situation, and then making a decision based on that. And I think that, in terms of the fact that that's not always happening, and that there's other motivating factors in terms of the racial environment that you're talking about, I think that's a definite. So I'm not denying that. All I'm saying is that people's fear of it, I don't find those fears to be substantiated in reality. That's it. That's all I'm saying. There's the evidence is just not there. When things happen, there's evidence that you can see. And it's if I'm not seeing it, I want to learn more. I've done a lot of investigation. I've tried to talk to a lot of people. I've read a lot of articles. I've done a lot of fact finding. Ultimately, it typically doesn't take that much for me to uncover reality. And so that's just what my conclusion is. Of course, it's my subjective opinion, but it is based on my research. It's not based on nothing.
No, that's you. So you've done your research and you come to a perspective that is rightfully yours, and it's an educated perspective that should not be discounted. I think that it's important to note the same way that some would say that it's irrational to believe that my son's going to be shot by the police when driving their car because of the statistical anomaly that would occur, is what you're saying in that someone should equally not be afraid of losing their jobs or for coming on to this show.
Precisely.
So, but what and I agree, but what I'm saying is that these fears do exist on both spectrums.
Yeah, I'm
on
aware.
Both sides of the spectrums. There are people who feel like they are likely to be murdered from walking to the grocery store to get a pack of Skittles. But and there are those who feel like...
But you know what the difference is, Adrian? I'm sorry, I have to cut in here. You know what the difference is? Is that a lot of people who are afraid of that have actually been stopped by people, have actually had the police called on people. Things have actually happened to them.
Like, that's the thing. So in your surveying and in your observation, what has led you to your analysis, my analysis and my surveying and my research has led me to that most people who express these views have never actually been in those encounters or experienced those things. So when you were talking earlier, and I'm glad that you talked about your specific, you didn't go too deeply in detail, but you did talk about your family and your own experiences with racism. I often ask people to share with me their unique experiences with racism of all skin shades, because contrary to some of the New York Times bestselling authors out there who suggest that racism only can occur to people of a certain skin shade, well, that doesn't jive or congeal with the, my scholarly definition of the term racism itself. Those same people would say that, you are irrational for even thinking that this can't happen. So I propose people to look at back to where we began.
It can't happen. I didn't.
No. I know that you didn't say that it couldn't happen. But what I'm saying is that people have to look at their own individual, unique set of circumstances before they start making decisions about their own life, not out of oblivion, not with a closed set of eyes, but examine what is the likelihood of this happening to me.
Thanks for watching. For access to the full-length conversation and all of the 2-hour-long unedited conversations that I've had on race, click the support link in the description below. Thanks for your support and see you next time.